I'm going to get started. Okay, so Shabbat Shalom for everyone who is here in person, those that are online, those who watch later. This week's parsha is Tazria and Metzora, and it starts in Leviticus 12 and goes through Leviticus 15:33. So it is a double portion. But before we begin, I do want to show a video clip of something before we actually get started. And so I am going to make sure I get this right here because, okay. So like I said, I want to show a video clip, and this is just I found the clip online. Not promoting the movie or anything like that. It's an older one. Are y'all ready? Yeah. Sorry. Sorry, they're all going on it. But I wanted to show this because I think it links in with what we're going to be talking about today. And it reminded me of a couple of things. So let me turn this around. I'm going to share. And let me know if you guys can't hear it. Okay. So, okay. You guys ready? So I'm going to turn this around so you guys can see too. Here, let me turn it on the TV. Give me that so I can turn it on the TV.
Way over there.
I'm going to try to do both at the same time. Sorry. Little technical difficulties. Eddie, I can't get it. There it is. Sorry. Hit me. Go to history. Sorry. Give it just a second. Okay.
Assalamu alaikum.
Can you guys hear it?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
What's the history of it?
No, it stopped.
Sorry. Yeah, I stopped it just a second. Here. Minute.
What's the history?
So, okay, no, because it's going to take too long. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start it right
Peace
here.
be with you. What is Jerusalem worth? Nothing. Everything.
Okay, so I wanted to show that video clip for just a second. Sorry, wait a second. Are you guys still there? There we go.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so I wanted to show that video clip for a reason. Because one, it is, if you don't know the story, Orlando Bloom in the video was, oh God, I can't remember his name right now. But anyway, he played a crusader who came, his father, he inherited the title. He came there to, they were controlling Jerusalem at that time under the King Baldwin IV. And King Baldwin IV, if you don't know, was the king of Jerusalem during the Crusaders. He was king over Jerusalem. He was called the Leper King. And with that, I think that scene says it all, because this is when Jerusalem was defeated and the Muslims were taking over. And that is Saladin that was taking over there. He was handing it over. And both the Christians didn't show the Jewish aspect, but the Christians, the Jews, and the Muslims there. And he's handing it over, and he asked him, because he told him right before that, he said, if you don't, do this, then we'll burn it to ground. We'll burn it to the ground before giving it Jerusalem over to you. And he asked Saladin, he said, what does it mean to you? And Saladin's reply, of course, is nothing. But then he turns around and he says, everything. Because Jerusalem is, in essence, nothing, but it is everything. And so he understood, and that's when, he peaceably handed it over to the Muslims. So, but yeah, that's the name of the movie is Kingdom of Heaven. Yeah. So, and, but I will put in the description, if you're watching it on replay, I will put the video clip link up there too. But this portion has a connection there, because not only is it about that, but it is about the sanctity of spaces. And yet in the story, King Baldwin was considered the leper king, but yet there is another leper king. And there is a difference between levels of sanctity. Okay. And I saw a great example of this when I was reading. And this week I will be doing a lot of reading. We're going to go to the scriptures, but I'm also going to be doing a lot of reading from rabbinic sources. Okay. And the reason I'm going to do that is because, do you really know what they believe about different things? We have heard, well, this is a Christian pastor telling us what they believe, but do we really know what they themselves say about certain things? And so we're going to be looking at a lot of those different sources. And so one of the things I was reading was in the Mishnah, and it asked the questions. It was like, it's portraying the differences between levels of sanctity, which we know that there are different levels of sanctity. For example, women could only go so far into the temple area. Okay. And men could, the Israelites, Levites could go farther. And then we also have the priests could go even farther. And then the high priest could go into the inner. So there are different levels of sanctity. But there's also, corresponding to that, different levels of uncleanness.
Yeah.
Which we don't think about. And a prime example is my little dog. I was talking about her a little while ago. We had a couple of years ago, Jake to pass. And, we think about,
Tell me, Jake.
yeah, Jake's my dog that died. But you think about a dead dog, and you think about a dead person. What is more unclean?
You mean between the
Dog or a person? What do you think? There's no person, dog.
No difference.
No difference. There is a difference. Yep.
I thought the dead one.
Okay. And there is a difference. And this is something we don't really know about, because we read over a lot of this. But in Leviticus 11:24 through 28, it talks about a dead animal. Dogs are pure heart. Yep. So we think about here, we got a dead animal. And it says, though, if you touch this dead animal, all you have to do is wash and, wait until evening, and you'll be clean the next day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Leviticus 11:24 through 28. But if we go over to Numbers 19 and look at verses 11 through 13, this is talking about a dead person. Okay. And Numbers 19:11 through 13 says, anyone who touches a corpse, no matter whose dead body it is, will be unclean for 7 days. And he must purify himself with the ashes on the 3rd and the 7th days for him to be clean. So you can see there is a difference between uncleanness between a dead person and a dead animal here, because the dead person requires you to do much more to be cleansed. Okay.
Can I ask one question?
Mhm.
I thought I was going to ask, but Yeshua, when he
Mhm.
died on the cross,
Mm-hmm.
they took him down,
Mm-hmm.
they wrapped him.
So
They
the
were
person,
unclean, so
the
they were
person, yeah, the person
So
who took
they
him from,
thought
right, the person who touched the dead body would have
So
been
they were
unclean.
days.
Yes, they would have been unclean for
So
7
they
days. They couldn't come in. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so when you look at that, that's what we're going to go through, is we're going to start looking at this portion, because this portion is a double parsha. And as we get through it, and I mean, it covers some harsh things. And last year I took it a different direction. I mean, last year I went, I guess, I don't know, traditional route where we look at things, with it being talking about our words and what we speak. And this year we're going to look at it a little different. So this is a double portion. It covers the days of purification after giving birth. Okay. For a woman giving birth. It covers zarat, which we often call leprosy, or is translated leprosy. And then it talks about the purification of the person who has zarat. And then it talks about, bodily functions, okay, emissions, certain things that would make you unclean. So there is a lot in this parasha than what just is read on the literal level. Because if we read it just on the literal level, we're going to see about, okay, the woman has a daughter unclean, if it's the son unclean, if this, you're have zarat, if you see it on your house, what to do. If you see, about a man and woman having relations, being unclean, if things happen during your sleep, you're unclean. So that's just the literal level of what's happening here. But when you look at the bigger picture, what do all of these things have in common? It's all about clean, tahor, and tameh, unclean. And so this first parasha is called Tazria. In Leviticus 12 is where it starts, in verse 1. And Tazria has at its root zera, which is seed. So it's talking about when she conceives or she has a child. Well, Metzora is the name of the second parsha, which is basically what you call the person who has zarat, which we call leprosy. So this year, like I said, I'm going to go through and we're going to look a lot at my Jewish, can't see my Jewish sources here. We're going to be looking at a lot of those. I'm going to be reading a lot of that as well as scripture, but I really focus this year on how it's pointing toward Yeshua and how much more he is in this portion than what we think about just giving birth and being unclean. Okay. And so if you're going to look at this teaching online, you're going to see that I put as a subtitle for the parasha that Yeshua, the leper king, and the walking dead. So, because I know people are all into Walking Dead. I've never watched an episode of Walking Dead. I have no clue what it's, I mean, I know it's about zombies, but that's it. That's all I know. So, but this is sort of what I gave it a little title for. So, we're going to look at Yeshua in this. So, let's go to Leviticus chapter 12, verse 1. Okay, so Leviticus chapter 12, verse 1. And I'm going to start, I'm going to read the first, I think, 8 verses here. Okay. And Yah spoke to Moshe and said, tell the people of Israel, if a woman conceives and gives birth to a boy, she will be unclean for 7 days with the same uncleanness as in her nidah, or her menstrual. Okay. And when she's having her menstrual period. On the 8th day, the baby's foreskin is to be circumcised, and she is to wait an additional 33 days to be purified from her blood. She is not to touch any holy thing or come into the sanctuary until the time of her purification is over. But if she gives birth to a girl, she will be unclean for 2 weeks, as in her nidah, and she is to wait another 66 days to be purified from her blood. And when the time of her purification are over, whether for a son or a daughter, she is to bring a lamb in its first year as a burnt offering, a young pigeon or a dove for a sin offering to the entrance of the tent of meeting to the Cohen, and he will offer it before Yah to make an atonement for her. Thus she will be purified from her discharge of blood. Such is the law for a woman who gives birth, whether to a boy or to a girl. And if she can't afford a lamb, she has to take 2 doves or 2 pigeons, one for a burnt offering and the other for a sin offering, and the Cohen will make atonement for her and she will be clean. Okay, so for a male child, the woman is tameh or unclean for 7 days after giving birth. Okay, and then on the 8th day, that male child is going to be circumcised. So think about this. Okay, you know, in a way, if she's unclean for that whole time period, she wouldn't have gotten to participate in the Brit Milah, the circumcision of her son. And Yah actually changes the status here because it's different time periods that she goes through, and there are different requirements in different states of uncleanness that happen. So she's unclean or separate for 7 days. But on the 8th day, she can still participate in the Brit Milah, which would not have been done at the temple. It would have been done in their homes, okay? And the male would be circumcised. And, we, talked about this before in the past about how on the 8th day that this was proven to be the least painful and the least amount of blood loss for the child. That's when I think they're K. The K is at the highest level. And then, and so then we see her in the second state where she is still in this time of purification, but it is now for 33 days. So she is going to be for a total separated. She's still at home. She's still, she's allowed to do things, whatever, after that 7th day. But she still can't go into the temple. Okay. And it is at the end of those combined 7 and 33, 40 days that she is able to go and bring her offering to the temple. Okay. And that is, for that male child. And if it's for a female, then it is double the amount of time. So instead of the 7 days that she is unclean, she is set apart for 14 days, and then she gets double the 33, which will be 66. So it's a total of 80 days for the female child. And then she could bring the offering to the Cohen. Okay. Yeah, we're going to talk about the difference there. And so, and we look at what she's to bring. She's to bring a lamb for an olah. She's to bring a dove or a pigeon for a sin offering. And if she's unable to bring a lamb, then she can bring 2 doves or 2 pigeons, one for an olah and the other one for a sin offering. So here comes the question: why, the 40 and 80 days? Why is it double? And I know lots of different thoughts on this. One, I've read different things. Is one, because with the male, he will go through the circumcision right there on the 8th day. But the female, you've got double female. You've got the double ability to menstruate. Okay. And this was something I saw interesting, which I did not know, that female baby girls can actually discharge blood like after the first week that they're born, which I did not know, but it can look like they're actually having a period when they're not. But I guess, because I don't know if something gets up inside the female, I don't know. But anyway, that was something that doctors said. So there is a possibility that that female girl could actually look like she's menstruating because she's discharging still blood from her body after the fact of being a week old. So, and he's saying he's gonna, no, okay.
It's like.
Yeah. Right. So when you think about the double ability, because that blood is representing death. Okay. So, and so you got double the girls. So it's double the time. That's one theory. Okay. Another is if you are reading in the Apocrypha, in the book of Jubilees, there is, the book of Jubilees is actually a retelling of the book of Genesis, and it goes through the history, but it actually bases it on multiples of sevens and the Jubilees. Okay. Because the Jubilee is 7 sevens. Okay. And up until the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, the earliest, version was around the, 15th and 16th centuries. But with the Dead Sea Scrolls that were found at Qumran, they were actually suggest that the dating of the book of Jubilees is about 100 BC. So, and I will put the link for the reference I'm going to read here in Jubilees. So when looking at the number in Jubilees 3:11 through 21, this is what it says. Okay. We know that, think about creation. Adam was created on what day? 6th day. Okay. The 6th day. That's the first week. Eve was not created until after Shabbat. So that would have been during the 2nd week that Eve was created. Okay. So according to this Jewish tradition, it was on the 6th day that Adam was created, but it was the 2nd week that Eve was created. And so in Jubilees 3, and I'm going to look at verses 11 through 21, it says, in the 1st week was Adam created, and the rib his wife. In the 2nd week, he showed her unto him. And for this reason, the commandment was given to keep in their defilement for a male 7 days, and for a female twice 7 days. And after Adam had completed 40 days in the land where he had been created, we brought him into the Garden of Eden to till and keep it. But his wife, they were brought in on the 80th day. And after this, she entered into the Garden of Eden. And for this reason, the commandment is given on the heavenly tables in regard to her that gives birth. If she bear a male child, she will remain in her uncleanness 7 days according to the 1st days of the week. And 33 days shall she remain in the blood of her purifying, and she shall not touch any hallowed thing nor enter into the sanctuary until she accomplish these days, which are enjoined in the case of a male child. But in the case of a female child, she shall remain in her uncleanness for 2 weeks of days, according to the first 2 weeks, and 66 days in the blood of her purification, and they will be in all 80 days. And when she has completed these 80 days, we brought her into the Garden of Eden, for it is holier than all of the earth. And besides, every tree that is planted in it is holy. Therefore, there was ordained regarding her who bears a male or a female child, the statute for those days that she could touch no hallowed thing, nor enter into the sanctuary until those days for the male and female are accomplished. This is the law and testimony which was written down for Israel in order they should observe it all of the days. So here in Jubilees, it's linking the birth not with a curse, but because Yah commands them to multiply, but it was a picture of Adam and Eve being brought into the garden, the holy place, and that he was brought in after that 1st week. He was created on the 6th day, Shabbat 7th. So then he was brought in on that 8th day, and then she wasn't created until that 2nd week, and that she wasn't brought in because it would have been a double the time for her until that 80th day. So they're basing that this is a picture of Adam and Eve being brought into the holy sanctuary of the garden on the 40th and the 80th day. So, I mean, that's it. Yeah, what?
Okay, Adam
Hmm.
and Eve followed, knew the law. God taught them the
Well,
law.
he would have taught him, yeah.
So when she gave birth, they couldn't go back into the garden because we consider the garden was for the holy place.
Right.
So,
But they were in Eden because Eden, they lived, you know, you
yeah,
got to remember
so how
Eden
did
is a
they
bigger
do
area.
it? If they
Then
knew
she
the
would have
law.
been, you know, she would have been
So-
outside until
Okay.
the time of the, yeah.
That's what I
She was
wondered.
just asking about, well, if that was true, then when Eve gave birth to her son, you know, when you look at Seth and or Cain and Abel at first, then she would have been outside of the garden for 7 days and then could go back in because she had male sons, you know,
Yeah.
on the 40th, on the 40th.
40th.
Well, that's later, but
Yeah.
that's not until after this, you know, not at first. So, because until after Cain kills Abel. I mean, they were outside of the garden. I mean, you're talking about getting close as she could to the Holy of Holies. No, yeah. Because you couldn't because of their whole
Because the angels stood there with swords.
right, because the angel stood there with a sword. Yeah, but not like they
So-
couldn't go. I mean, they could go so far into that. But there is a difference
But she-
between
yeah.
okay, and then this comes up there. Okay, this is another point because we're looking at it just physically. Okay, well, if this was Jerusalem was the Garden of Eden, yes, there was a physical, but the Garden of Eden, this is how do I explain this? There's a spiritual and then there's a physical. Okay, when Adam and Eve were walking in the garden in the beginning, it was heaven with earth together.
God came
Okay,
down.
because God could walk amongst them in that garden. But something happened with the sin that heaven part separated and that there was still that earthly part that was here, but Yah could not come down into the presence with Adam again, and that he was cast out from that. You see what I'm saying? It was that spirit. I don't know how else to explain that part.
To go, so they couldn't
The-
enter
yes.
the tree of life.
Yeah, but we want to look at everything just okay. Well, literally, well, they could not walk in there. You know, whether this is true or not, it's a picture of you know where there are jubilees. You know, if you believe it or not, that is a picture of Adam being able to go into his presence on that 40th day, whereas the bride didn't get to come in until the 80th day. Now, this also makes me think about, okay, think about Yeshua because we're looking at Yeshua on this. So let's go to Luke chapter 2. Okay, Luke chapter 2. And I'm going to go down to verse 21. Okay, on the 8th day, when it was time for his Brit Milah, he was given the name Yeshua, which is what the angel had called him before his conception. And when the time came for their purification according to the Torah of Moshe, they took him up to Jerusalem to present him to Yah. As it is written in the Torah of Yah, every firstborn male is to be consecrated to Yah, and also to offer a sacrifice of a pair of doves, 2 pigeons, as required by the Torah of Yah. Okay, so, you know, a few things stick out when we look at this. One, we see here, they're Jewish. They're going up to the temple. Not only are they Jewish, they're like Orthodox. Okay, so they are going up following the commands of Yah. Okay, but not only that, they're holding on, and this is something that we don't think about. They are holding on to Jewish traditions, not Torah, but traditions, because nowhere in scripture do we see that you name a child on the 8th day. But Jewish traditions of that day was if it was a male child, you named him at his circumcision.
Yeah.
So here we see Miriam and Joseph with baby Yeshua are actually naming him at his circumcision on the 8th day. Okay. And it also says what they're bringing for a sacrifice. Okay. And it says here they're going to bring these 2 doves or 2 pigeons. Well, if we go back to what we just read, if we look at what they were to bring, and where is it? Verse 6, when the days of the purification were over, she is to bring a lamb in its first year for a burnt offering and a young pigeon or a dove for a sin offering to the entrance of the tent of meeting. He will offer it before Yah. But if she can't afford a lamb, then she is to take 2 doves or 2 pigeons. So here at Yeshua's, do we see them bringing a lamb?
No.
No. So that's letting us know that she's bringing the pigeons. They're not really a wealthy family. You know, they don't really have a lot of money here, but they're bringing what is required. Okay. Now, is this happening when he's 8 days old? No. It's happening when she's 40 days after, because she can't go up to the temple until that time of purification was over. So this would have been on the 40th day that she would have been able to go up to the temple with baby Yeshua and, you know, do the sacrifice. Okay. Now let's go back to Leviticus chapter 12. Verse 2, and it's a little, I think it's going to be a little easier for me to read it on my phone. Okay. Let me go to Leviticus chapter 12. Okay. And verse 2. Yes, because sorry, my font's a little bigger here. Because I do want to read this in the Hebrew, and I've been practicing my Hebrew reading, so y'all get to bear with me because I've been doing this. Okay. Eddie's laughing at me. Daber el b'nei Yisrael, le'emor isha ki Tazria v'yelda zakar u tamea shevaat yamim be'yemei nidat dota. I'm trying to look at the word I wanted to see. Titame. Okay, so when I look at this, this is the part I wanted to focus on, where it says that Tazria, they yelda. Okay, so, and that is interesting for a couple of different reasons, because Tazria here is actually written Tav Zion Resh Yud Ayin. Okay, Tav Zion Resh Yud Ayin. And when you put the Tav at the beginning, it makes it future tense. Okay, so Tazria here is basically she will conceive. Okay, but then the next word here, yeah, is Vayelda is actually written Bob, which is, you know, and, okay, and then Yud Lamed Dalet Hey, okay, but the way this one is written, it is not in the future tense, okay, because you would say, you know, if she will conceive and she does give birth, okay, like, you know, you're doing future tense here, but it's not. It says when she will conceive and she has given birth. Okay, wait a minute. So that's putting that part in the past tense. So we got the first part of that sentence written in future tense, and then the second part is written in past tense, which is a problem. And so when I started looking at this, I got to looking, and a lot of the rabbis have dug into this too, because they're like, this is, there's a difference. It's not written in the same, tense structure. And I wanted to look at what the rabbis say about this and how this ties in to Yeshua. Okay. So like I said, I'm going to be quoting some rabbinic Jewish sources to show you what they believe. And, like I said, I'll put links to this in there. But okay, the first one, if you look at Leviticus, this is the commentary, Leviticus 12:2, and it is from Or HaHaim, and I will put the link in there. This is what it says. This verse also contains an allusion to Knesset Yisrael, or the congregation of Israel. The Jewish people are as a conceptual entity. We find that this term is applied to women in such verses as Isaiah 54:5, which it says, "For he has made you, he will espouse you." The prophet also continues saying that, "in the wife of your youth." The prophet Hosea describes the relationship of God and the Knesset Israel, or the congregation of Israel, in Hosea, of speaking to his bride, saying, "I will betroth you to myself forever," in Hosea 2:21. And so this is what they say: "She shall be Tameh for a 7-day period. These 7 days are viewed as Havlei Mashiach, or the birth pangs of the Messiah." Most of us have heard this term before. Okay. The last for 7 years, and during which Israel will be refined spiritually in the preparation for his arrival. He will make his appearance during the 8th year. And on the 8th day, at the beginning of the 8th day or year, the baby is to have its foreskin removed. The concept of the foreskin, which acts as a barrier between man and God, will be removed from the universe. We read in Zechariah 13:2 that God will destroy the spirit of impurity from the earth. This will occur during the 8th year. It is well known that conceptually the foreskin is identical with the forces of Klipla, the evil speech, evil not animations. Trying to think of the word. It's the overall arching, not Sean Hara, but the overall arching evil concepts and negative. That's what it's representing. When the Torah wrote the word here, where it's talking about Tema, that describing the state of the mother, it is a simile for the afflictions experienced during the birth pangs of the Messiah. Okay, so look at that's what they said here in Or HaHaim. So what they're saying is that not only is this woman that is being referenced in Leviticus 12:2 is not only a picture of a woman, but she is also a picture of not only Eve back in the garden, but she is also a picture of the congregation of Israel that is seen as Yah's wife. And that Yah's wife is going to be unclean for this 7-day period, which is known as Havlei HaMashiach, the birth pains of the Messiah, at the Mashiach will arrive at the 7th day. Okay. And then in essence, that when he arrives, that the orla, the foreskin, is going to be removed. That which is blocking Yeshua from the world today is going to be removed. So they see this woman being Israel, and that she, that this is Yah's plan, that she's separated for this 7,000 year period because of the fact of this uncleanness. And it is at the end of the 7 years that the Mashiach will come, that the barrier that is holding him back, that's the restraining that we read in Acts, that that he is restrained, the restrainer, that will be removed, and that he will come, and what happens? Then there is the 8th day that we will be with him.
Is it possible, or whatever, that the foreskin, they burn it after they cut it off?
I don't know. I don't know what they do with it. I have to,
we
I don't know. I don't know.
Because they couldn't lay it aside.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, a lot of times they don't necessarily, I mean, I know in Jewish tradition that, you know, like they pick up all of the pieces, like when stuff happens and they bury it. So I see it. Yeah, they would be buried. Yeah, probably be buried. No, I don't think they're burned. I think they're dead. And he's like, I don't really care what happens to the foreskin. Okay. The men in here are going, oh my gosh, no.
Can I add one little thing that I
Go ahead. Come
learned
on,
this
Angela.
morning? And hopefully you didn't say it earlier.
Uh-huh.
But the blood on the 8th day of a male coagulates
Mhm.
at the highest levels on and his entire life on
Yes.
that 8th day. And then I looked
Yes.
into the word this morning, the meaning behind that, and it's connected to transformation and to be gathered.
Yeah.
And I just think it's so symbolic of that, you know, the 7 days being connected to the physical, and then the
Mhm.
8th being connected to the spiritual, and flesh
Mhm.
and blood
Right.
doesn't inherit the kingdom.
Right.
And how this is pointing to the blood and it being transformed.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
the child will not believe at this point.
Right, yeah.
The code and the, you know.
Yeah, that it caught.
and
Yeah, she was just talking about even too that the child would not bleed out at that time. And, you know, we think it would be a little weird, but, you know, if you've ever gone to a Brit Milah, like when Hillel was born, when Leah had Hillel, you know, they actually, you know, you got the mole there, but you got the mole is the one that does the circumcision. But not only that, but they put a dropper of wine in the baby's mouth.
Yeah.
Because this is how they look at it, is that as a male, they wait till that 8th day. Not only is that a picture of the new beginning or whatever, but it is also that they see it that Yah allowed you to live one Shabbat without the covenant of him,
Yeah.
to see what it would be like. And that after they're doing the circumcision, that you are part of the covenant now, and you actually partake of the kiddush.
I would need a whole cup of wine.
And he said he would need the whole cup of wine at 8 days old. Okay, but look at this picture. I mean, it's a picture of we are we're the congregation. We are the woman here. We are unclean for 7,000 years. Yeah, we've been.
What are the ladies do nowadays? Well,
Jewish children, no. Orthodox, no. You know, Jewish. If you're Orthodox, you wait till the 8th day. Most of the, I guess in hospitals they do it like, I don't know, like I don't know if it's right away or the 3rd day or whatever. I don't know. I haven't had a male child, so I don't know. So
Yeah, I don't think.
okay. I don't know.
Sandra,
Sandra, you've had a male child. Angelina, you've had a male child. Did they do it I don't know if they were circumcised or what, but did they do it on the 3rd day, or did they ask you, or what? I mean, I don't know.
It was in the hospital. I think it was, within the first few days.
First 3 days, yeah. So I was like, yeah, I was like, I think it's a.
Is it okay if I ask a question?
Go ahead.
I'm just wondering how this prophetically, the difference between a male child and a woman child prophetically fits into the foreshadowing timeline. And if you have any thoughts on that.
About you talking about like the bride coming in on the.
With the differences, even tying back to the garden with Adam, and then it being double time for Eve, and like, does that tie in prophetically in your mind at all?
And with the new, or
because it's all right? He's showing these things for a reason, especially if he's reiterating it and he's ingraining it in us. Like, what is this pointing to? And I think we see a lot like his firstborn Israel is his firstborn.
Mhm.
But then what happens to the rest?
But Israel is also the bride.
Right. So that could,
Only
like,
the
in my
bride
mind,
is-
that could fit into like the first 8, but then is there something for the rest? I don't know. I'm just wondering how that piece fits in.
Because I don't, I mean, I'm looking at too, because there's different, applications of who Israel is. Because sometimes she is this, like you said, sometimes she's the daughter, whatever, and then sometimes but she is the bride here. And this is the one that's giving birth to, the Mashiach, which she did come, she is giving birth to the Mashiach here, a male child. And it's during that, that parallel, the 7 days of unclean, and then him coming at the end of that and then ushering us in on the 8th day. But if we're the bride, then I don't know. Good question. I don't know if there's another parallel to another, like a girl coming in or more children. But
I think too, really a beautiful picture if you think about it, like Yeshua, when he was born and everything. You hear about when he was born, but you never hear nothing else.
yeah,
And he never, him being God, come down to the earth, Virgin.
yeah.
He never did.
She's talking about, you don't really have a lot of information about Yeshua's younger life. We don't really see a lot of written about him growing up or whether, but too, what is that? Is that because who's writing the Gospels?
Right.
It were the Talmudim that were really, most of them didn't come to really get to know him until he was probably, starting
30.
his ministry.
30.
Yeah, around 30. And then, except for John. But we'll go there because I'm going to bring up the verse about John, his own husband asked. Well, and 2, is that important? We want to know all the little details, but what they were focusing on, because doesn't it say even in the word that if it was written, if they wrote down everything he did, it wouldn't be able to be contained.
No.
And so I think it is just picking the most important parts of what to focus on there.
Yeah.
And if we think about too, that there's a picture in Revelation chapter 12 and verse 1, we see a woman that has these birth pangs. In Revelation 12 and 1, it says, now there was a great sign seen in heaven. A woman is clothed with the sun, and under her feet was the moon, and on her head was a crown of 12 stars. And she was pregnant and about to give birth, and she was screaming in the agony of labor. So this woman in Revelation is who? Israel. Yeah, she's clearly Israel because she's got the 12 stars, the 12 tribes. And this is exactly, if we go back to Genesis 37 with Joseph, and where he had his dream in 37 and verse 9, it says that Joseph had another dream and he told his brothers, and he says, here, I've had this dream, and there was the sun and the moon and the 11 stars prostrating themselves. So we have the same elements that are in Revelation. Well, who were the sun and the moon? His father and his mother. The 11 stars were his brothers. Well, wait a minute. There were only 11, but it said in Revelation 12, because you didn't count the other son. Okay. And they were prostrating before me, and he told his father too, as well as his brothers, and his father rebuked him and said, what is this dream you've had? Do you really expect me and your mother and your brothers to come and prostrate before you? And so, it's clearly saying that this is Israel, that this woman is Israel. So this child in Revelation that she's bearing is Mashiach. And yeah, and Hasatan is waiting there to try to devour them. But in another place here, I'm going to go to, this is another Jewish source. It's called Ateret Yeshua. And it is written in Yalkut Mashiach, in the portion Tazria, that says this. Okay, I'm going to quote what it says. I'm going to start right here at this part. It's talking about, and killed only Messiah, the son of David, will bring him to life, as it says in Psalms 21 and 5. He asked life of you, and you gave it to him, the length of days forever and ever. The words, when a woman conceives, alludes to the Messiah, the son of David, cryptically to the kingdom. That is the secret meaning of the woman. The words she gave birth to allude to Messiah, the son of Joseph, to indicate that Messiah, the house of David, will bring Messiah, the son of Joseph, back to life. You ever heard that before? This is in Yalkut Moshiach, and it's in the portion that talks about this parsha, Tazria. But it's basically saying, because, you know, they believe in two messiahs, okay, the Mashiach ben David and the Mashiach ben Joseph. But they say here that the Messiah, the son of Joseph, is going to be killed, and that the Messiah, the son of David, is going to bring him back. Now, they don't see Yeshua as being both of those roles. But it's interesting that they say that the Messiah ben David is going to bring back to life Messiah ben Joseph. Even in the Talmud, the Sanhedrin 97a, this is what it says. The Barita supports the opinion of Rabbi Yitzhak. As Rabbi Yitzhak says, the son of David will not come until the entire kingdom will be converted to heresy. Rabbah says, what is the verse from which this statement is derived? It is the verse, it is all turned white and he is declared ritually pure. Leviticus 13:13. One is a leper and is ritually impure only if he has a leprous mark, however small, but not if his skin is completely leprous. Similarly, the world will be redeemed only when the Jewish people reach their lowest point. Okay? So the Talmud here says that the whole world is going to be converted to heresy, that's when the son of David is going to come. And they're linking it to this verse about all of that the leper is being turned white, that when he's completely white, he's pure. He's declared ritually pure again, okay? Which doesn't make sense because you can have spots. One spot and you're unclean, you got a whole bunch of spots over you. But if you're completely white, you're clean. Okay. But they're saying when the whole world is converted to heresy. Now, wait a second. When this whole entire planet is heresy, you got it. He said, okay. Well, have we heard this in scripture before? 2 Thessalonians 2 and 3. Second Thessalonians 2 and 3. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come except an apostasy. What is apostasy? A falling away happen first, and that the man of sin be revealed, the man of the sin of perdition. So when the world is full of wickedness, when they're completely white with leprosy, the rabbis say that is when the world is about to be purified with the coming of Mashiach.
What did Mashiach, what did Yeshua say? You won't see me again until you say and cry out to me, you know.
Yeah, Baruch Haba, yeah.
Come to the name of
Yeah,
the Lord.
Eddie was just saying that, you know, think about what Yeshua said. Yeshua says that you're not going to see me again until you cry out to me, Baruch Haba B'Shem Adonai. You know, and when are they going to do that? Yeah.
They're crying out, save me.
Yeah, they're crying out, save me, because and that's what, you know, and we look at this. This is what Orthodox rabbis believe. They believe that when the world is turned to complete heresy, when the Jewish people reach their lowest point is when the Mashiach is going to come. And they're liking it to but they're liking it to the story of the leper. Okay.
Yeah. Because Israel has been going through so much. For
Yep.
so long.
And then another misconception
fires, wars.
is
Yep.
the world, they're thinking they're gonna have this great revival and everybody's gonna come. And that's just opposite what it says.
Yeah, and he's talking about, a lot of times, like for them growing up in the church, I know Mike and Eddie and stuff and
Yeah.
probably Ken too. But you grew up hearing there's going to be this great revival, end time revival or whatever. But the word says there's going to be a great falling away.
Oh.
I think there's going to be a revival. And we've talked about this before. I mean, I think it really started back in really the early 90s when stuff started really coming out. But then where did it happen? It didn't happen in these big mainstream churches. It's happening in little places, houses all around the world, and that you have this revival, but it's happening underfoot and it's not happening the way that they think it should happen. Just like with Yeshua's coming, they didn't see it happen in the way that they anticipated it happening because okay. Well, think about this. Okay, here's something to think about. When we talk about salvation, when we talk about being saved, it is different than what the Jewish mindset is of it. Because when they were talking about, even in Yeshua's day, about, when are you going to restore the kingdom? It's about him being a king and taking over and getting rid of the oppressive rulers of this wicked world. That was what they're looking at salvation there. It's not the individual. We think of individual salvation, but they're looking at it as the national level of restoring Yah to his kingdom. That's the way they're looking at it. And we're looking at it individually. You see what I'm saying? That's just like the whole concept of Yom Kippur, which comes up in next week's parashah. We look at Yom Kippur and we're applying it individually, and Yom Kippur is only about the nation. It is not about individual atonement. It is about the nation being covered during that time.
Yeah, I heard it. And he said that to you, he was talking to some visitors from Switzerland, and he said to you, it has a totally different meaning.
Yeah, she's just talking about watching. Yeah, she was talking about watching on the IL news, and that they were talking to an Israeli soldier, and he was talking to people in Sweden and saying how what they were saying meant something different to them as opposed to how it said.
Is Israel.
Yeah, it's about community.
He said a life killed to you. You understand why are we killing people?
Well, that's just like
yeah.
Well, because too, when you look at because she was saying, when you're looking at taking a life, it is more than just one. It is it's a national community thing, because when they look at it, that you go out and you're murdering someone, that you are actually not only killing them, but you're killing every descendant that they would have. So it is thought of in the community and the nation as opposed to just the individual aspect.
We do not kill uselessly. We do not kill babies. We do not kill women.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's not talk about the war part. Let's keep going. Yeah. Yeah. Well, she's talking about Israel. Yeah. So
can I add something, or is this going to throw us off?
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, it's been bringing me to Revelation 22 this week, where it's talking about the tree of life, bearing the 12 fruits, yielding its fruit every month, the leaves for the healing of the nations. That is after the New Jerusalem comes down. That's like after that 8th day, right?
Right.
And outside, there's still dogs.
Well, and and then you look at, when you think about, because this is the New Jerusalem coming down. Well, when it talks about outside, what does that mean? Is that just outside the city? Because when you were outside the city, as we'll see in this portion, you were considered dead. You didn't go to the feast. You know what I'm saying? You didn't get to come up. The leper did not get to come up and celebrate. They were not part of their family. They didn't have any ties to the community at all. Is that, yeah, is that like eternal damnation? You know what I'm saying? The judgment.
Or is this going back to the original garden state? Because we see that Eve, at least in the book of Jubilees, she had to leave the garden, right? When she was unclean. So it wasn't, so sometimes when the New Jerusalem's here, that is his dwelling place, that is his temple, but the rest of the earth, it seems like, is unclean. It's just the New Jerusalem, that Garden of Eden, that is clean, and outside.
Well, but it says there's going to be a new heaven and a new.
But there's still an outside, right?
Yeah,
and those Lasons are still coming to the New Jerusalem for healing. And so I wonder if this is tying into that period that is extended, that we see the length extended for the woman. So the firstborn will make it in that kingdom to begin with, and then there's an extended period of time for them to get clean and come in, maybe. I don't know. I just, as we're talking.
I don't know. Because I hadn't thought about that part of it. And you're really thinking about because what I've seen from it, when it was always talking about them being outside, it was more of just like that eternal damnation, that there were the gnashing of teeth. That was going to be the aspect of it. So I haven't thought about it like that. I think
it's kind of like
when the door was closed, they were outside. So, and what were they do? What happened to them? Yeah, he was saying, like with Noah's Ark, the ones that were outside basically were, like lost. Yeah. I don't know. So it's something to think about.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go to the second part of the parsha, which starts in Leviticus 13:1. And we ain't even gotten to the good part yet, but okay. So 13:1. Yah said to Moshe and Aaron, if someone develops on his skin a swelling, a scab, or a bright spot, which could develop into the disease, Zaharat, he is to be brought to Aaron the Cohen or to one of his sons who are Kohanim. It begins here, when we look at this, it begins, if someone. But in Hebrew, it says, ki adam, a man. But it doesn't use the word ish, or enosh. It uses Adam, okay? Which is interesting because most of the time, the most common one that you're going to use is ish, okay? That's usually the common word that you would use for man. And so it is linking this back to Adam. So there's a link here between leprosy and Adam, which is interesting because the first part of the parsha, since this is a double portion, is dealing with the woman, Eve. And then the second part looks like it's talking about linking it with Adam. And, so in Leviticus 14, and I'm going to go over to verse 34, it says, when you've entered the land of Canaan, which I'm giving you as a possession, and I put an infection of Zaharat in a house in the land which you possess. Okay, so it says Zaharat here. Well, this is something we brought up before, is that one thing about leprosy that we have today is referred to as Hansen's disease. It's not Zaharat, because Hansen's disease today doesn't get on a house. It can't spread to a house. Yeah, I just thank y'all for that. But Zaharat can. So, and leprosy is chronic and infectious or whatever, but it's, we see documentation of Zaharat in scripture, and like even in the Haftorah portion, that he is living amongst his family and he has Zaharat. Naaman does, and he actually, it's not contagious, is what we think of, like leprosy, being around them, you can get it. So Zaharat is, even though it's called leprosy, it is a divine affliction. A divine affliction. It is a spiritual condition. It is not necessarily, it is something that is is manifested itself physically, but it is actually a heart condition that's going on. Okay. And when you look, they don't go to the Rophe, the doctor, they go to the priest. Okay. It is the priest that determines if this is a harat. It's not the doctor.
Yeah, I think too that it encompasses a lot of things that's not really leprosy or your skin.
Right. It is a spiritual thing, but it just manifests outside of your body.
But third world countries, there's a lot of lepers, you know.
Yeah, but that's different. A bacteria, yeah. Mhm.
Which they are.
Right, yeah, they're lepers, yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, that leprosy is infectious. Yeah, it is highly contagious. So when you look at this, it is something with their heart that's going on.
Yeah.
And like I said, they go to the priest to determine this spiritual condition. And the priest is the one that examines the person. They're going to, and we think of, oh, he's looking at their skin. Well, yeah, he's going to look at their skin, but he's also asking them questions and, determining the deeper cause of it. And, he's the one who is diagnosing it. And when you think about this entire chapter, it's only the Cohen, the priest, who is declaring someone clean or unclean. Okay. And, like I said, it wasn't just about the skin, because if it was, the Cohen would be able to determine if it was Zaharat, if it was just about the skin. Now, the Hebrew word here for skin is very similar to the word for light, but I want to go to this. The Hebrew word for light, or, is written Aleph Vav Resh. Okay, Aleph Vav Resh. And we think about in Genesis 3, when Adam and Eve sinned, Yah clothed them with skin. And that's in verse 3:21. And it's or. But when we look at the word for skin, even though it's pronounced the same, light or and skin or is pronounced exactly the same. But they're written differently. Okay. Skin is written Ayin Vav Resh. Ayin Vav Resh. But it's pronounced exactly the same. So light, Aleph Vav Resh, skin, Ayin Vav Resh. The difference between the two is the Aleph and the Ayin. And both of those letters in Hebrew are silent. So they don't really make a sound. But those letters have a picture meaning. The Aleph represents master, Yah, okay? And so that's light. The or, Aleph Vav Resh, was in the original image, of man, was in the original image of Yah. I believe that he was that Aleph Vav Resh. But when Adam sinned, that Aleph actually changed and becomes an Ayin. It's that flesh, which Ayin is the word I, and it's man becomes clothed in his flesh, which is linked to his eye. What does he see? So Zaharat is tied with not only, think about how many things, how we react to things about what we see or what we perceive. Okay. And so Zaharat is, not like leprosy as we see, but, and in
I read that.
Light and skin. Yeah. He clothed them with skin.
With the skin, because they
Right.
were a light form.
They were a light form, yeah, but they were, and now they're this flesh that is actually, we're born now we're into this, we're born in the image of Adam, where we're all looking at things by our sight and, perceiving things that way. And in, back in the Torah portion in Leviticus 13:2, it actually calls this Zaharat a negah, a plague, okay? Which again links it back to the garden, because in Genesis 3, notice what it says here. In Genesis 3:3, he tells Adam and Eve, but the fruit of the tree in the middle of the garden, God said, you are neither to eat it nor touch it, or you will die. The word touch is actually from that root, nagah. So by Adam and Eve eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, they're basically bringing upon themselves a naga, a plague. And, if we think, it even says there in verse 3 and in chapter 2, verse 17, that on the day you eat from it, you will certainly die. Well, did Adam and Eve die that day?
Yeah.
Yes and no.
No.
Yes and no.
No.
Yeah, in a way. Okay, so think about it this way. They were light beings created in the image of Yah. Before that, did they have eternal life? Yes. But the day they ate of that fruit, they started the process of dying. Okay. So, and what happened? They were separated from the camp, just as the one who has leprosy is separated from the camp. And if you're separated from the camp, you were considered as dead. You had no family. You had no, connection to anybody else there. No, we're not made in the image of God. It says clearly we're made in the image of Adam. Okay.
When a person dies, you're to
Rejoice. Yeah, you're rejoiced at their death. You cry. Yeah, because days down. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, it's the opposite. Yeah. And so think about this, those with Metzora are considered dead. They can't celebrate the feast. They can't interact with their families. They can't live in the city. They got to live outside. Well, what's outside? All the animals, the wild animals, whatever. Think about, Eddie, your favorite movie. Ben-Hur. What happened in Ben-Hur? Ben-Hur, what happened to his family? They got leprosy and they were sent outside. They had to live out in those caves, out in the Judean wilderness with the animals and things. And so when we think about they were basically the walking dead. They were alive and they're walking around, but they were as dead. And not only that, but just think about it. If you're walking down the street, I mean, you're not even in the city because you can't even go in the city. You got to be outside the city. And so if people had to be generous to help, donate stuff or let you glean off of some of their fields because you couldn't even go in the city to buy things. But if you saw somebody coming near you, what did you have to do? You had to cover and start crying out, Tameh, Tameh, I'm unclean, I'm unclean. And you couldn't even get near them. So you think about how sad it is for you to see people that you love and you can't even go near them.
In the new covenant, when Yeshua, they talk a lot about it.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, and that's something we're going to look. Okay, so this in Leviticus 13 is referred to as a plague of Zaharat. And we think about, with Miriam spoke evil about Moshe's wife here. And
kind of like COVID.
Kind of like COVID, yeah. And what happened? This Zaharat popped up. Okay. When she was speaking bad about Moshe, this Zaharat, she got this. Now, when we think about what we should realize with these plagues, is too that these plagues come upon Israel for disobedience, including Zaharat. And it's not that Yah is really trying to be mean and destroy us and, I'm going to punish them. No, but why does he do that? Why do you punish your kids?
Discipline.
But do you do it because you're enjoying it? No. You love them. You're trying to get them to do the right thing. They don't know what to do. And so this is what Yah is doing. When Yah allows these plagues to come upon us, it's not to destroy us, but it is trying to lead us to repentance into his ways. And since, Yeah, Miriam was outside of the camp. Mhm. Yeah, she was considered a prophetess. Yeah.
You know, not as, you know.
Yeah. Even though we don't have a lot of what she prophesied, we don't see a lot.
She was the one that watched Moses.
Yeah,
go
she
down
did.
the Nile.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so she, yeah.
But then for her to, well, Aaron said it too, but it went more on her because she was with the.
Okay. Yeah, and to think about, that's important, to what she, think about, she was all of those things, but yet she spoke negatively.
Yes, she did. There's Moses' wife.
Okay, and I saw something, actually I was looking at something for the first time last night, and I was listening to this rabbi and speak, and he was talking about the words you speak, but he said, we've always taken it, to talk, bad, talk bad about others. But he said, how many times do we say to ourselves, you can't do that, or, oh, well, this is, you're cursing yourself, and you are doing a lot of things to yourself. And, I love what, Angelina, I'm going to share this. I hope this is okay. What you said about your mom. Or do you want to share it about what you said about your mom when she was, not doing so well there, and at the end about she did not want to speak Lashon Hara.
I'd be honored to share.
Go
Yeah.
ahead.
So it was around this time last year, we were going through this tour portion, and it's convicting. And so she was like, you know what? I have to stop saying what I'm feeling, because everybody was caring about her and asking, how are you doing? How are you doing? And the more she kept saying it, the worse she was noticing she was feeling, kind of like with this tooth situation. So I think, yeah. So she came up with this, what is true that she can say that is speaking life. So she started saying, I am so loved and supported, every time she was asked that. And truly,
Instead
it was
of saying,
just,
I can't breathe, I'm not hurt.
right. And just the more she said that, the more loved and supported she became. And the other day I woke up and I was like, I'm going to just change my speech, because what I've been doing hasn't been working. And I started saying, Yah is healing me and he's working this out for good. And I swear it was like in a half hour, the pain, like so much of it went away. And then I had a praise report from a sister from her on Friday morning after a Thursday call, who woke up and said the same thing. I'm going to change my speech. Same thing. Within a half hour, she said it was noticeably different, and she had been struggling for days. So it's, so powerful.
So, yeah. So that, I thought that was a great example of it, that, just finding something positive to say instead of saying, exactly how she was feeling there at that time. So that was a great example. So, okay. And you think about this, Zaharat is a spiritual condition. Only Yah can discern our heart. But once it's discovered, he starts exposing those hidden sins, then bringing it to the light of day. We need to start, checking ourselves, watching what we're doing. So,
and after that, when the leper came on,
let's go ahead and turn Matthew while she's talking. Yeah, Matthew 11. Yeah, you don't see, right, all about her after that. Yeah.
Because of what she said, and everything.
Yeah, you don't really see a lot written about her after that.
She just, that is just up till she died,
Okay, so Matthew chapter 11, and I want to look at some other links to Yeshua. Verse 2. Meanwhile, Yochanan the Immerser had been put in prison. Okay, this is John, Yeshua's cousin, Elizabeth's son, okay, and heard what Messiah had been doing. So he heard what Yeshua's been doing. So he sent a message to him through his Talmudim asking, now wait a minute, this is Yeshua's own cousin, and he's asking him, are you the one to come, or should we look for someone else? And Yeshua answered, go and tell Yochanan what you're hearing and seeing. The blind are seeing, the lame are walking, people with Zaharat are being cleansed, the deaf are hearing, and the dead are being raised. The good news is being told to the poor, and how blessed is anyone not offended by me. So Yeshua's own cousin is asking, questioning. Now he knew Yeshua. So why is he asking, are you the one who is to come, or should we look for someone else? Didn't he know? Confirmation. Well, what does Mashiach mean? No, it doesn't remember. It means Mashiach, anointed one. Okay, anointed one. So in the first century, and this is what I said earlier, what does that mean? Anointed one in the first century meant anointed king, who would bring the people out from under the rule of the oppressors. And look at what Yeshua's reply is. He says, the blind can see, the lame are walking, Zaharat's cleansed, the deaf are hearing, and the dead are being raised. Now, all of those are in the prophets linked with Messiah except one. In Isaiah 35:5. Isaiah 35:5. It says, the eyes of the blind will be opened, the ears of the deaf will be unstopped. The lame will leap like a deer, a mute person's tongue will sing, for in the desert springs will burst forth and streams of water in the Arava. If we go to Isaiah 26. In verse 19. Your dead will live, my corpses will rise, awake and sing, you who dwell in the dust, for your dew is like the morning dew, and the earth will bring the ghosts to life. So, looking at those two passages in the prophets, just which one's missing? Yeshua said, the blind can see, the lame are walking, Zaharat's cleansed, deaf can hear, dead being raised. Which one's not mentioned in the prophets? Zaharat. It doesn't say Zara. It doesn't say the leper is going to be cleansed. But it was understood in those days. And how do we know that? This is where we go to the Jewish source. In the Sanhedrin 98a, it says this. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi met Elijah standing at the entrance of Rabbi Simeon Yochanan's tomb, and he asked him, have I a portion in the world to come? And he replied, if the master desires it. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says, I saw two, but I heard a voice of a third. And he asked him, when will Messiah come? And he said, go and ask him yourself, was his reply. Well, where is he sitting? At the entrance. And by what sign will I recognize him? He is sitting among the poor lepers, all of them, all at once, and rebandage them together, whereas he unties and rebandages each separately before treating the next, thinking, should I be wanted, if it being my time for my appearance as the Messiah, but I must not be delayed through having to bandage a number of sores. So did you catch what the Talmud says? That Messiah, where he's going to be? Sitting among the poor lepers, okay? In Sanhedrin 98a, that's in 98a, in 98b, it says this, and the rabbi said, the world was created only on David's account. Samuel said, on Moses' account. And Rabbi Yochanan said, for the sake of Messiah. What is the Messiah's name? And the school of Shiloh said, his name is Shiloh, for it is written until Shiloh comes. And the school of Rabbi Yanai says his name is Yinon, for it is written, his name shall endure forever. That in Hebrew is Yinon. Okay. The son was his name, which is Yinon. The school of Rabbi Hananiah maintained his name is Hananiah, as it is written, where I will not give you Hananiah. Others say his name is Menachem, the son of Hezekiah, for it is written, because Menachem, the comforter that would surely relieve my soul, is far. And the rabbis together, so they're having this argument over what his name is based on different verses in the word that says different descriptions about him, okay? The last thing it says here is that the rabbis together, this is what they came to the conclusion. The rabbis said, his name is Leper Scholar, as it is written. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet we did esteem him a leper, smitten of God and afflicted. So after all this disagreement, they finally come to the conclusion that his name is going to be Leper Scholar, and they're basing it on this verse. Okay. This verse is Isaiah 53, verse 4. Let's look at that verse because I want to show you what they're saying as opposed to what it says. And that's interesting. Isaiah 53, verse 4. Okay. So I'm going to read you the last part that they just said about that verse before I read the verse. The rabbi said his name is Leper Scholar, as it is written. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet we did esteem him a leper, smitten of God and afflicted. Now you read 53:4. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet we did esteem him stricken, smitten of God and afflicted. Do you see leper? But the rabbis are saying it's leper. Where are they getting leper? Okay. And so first,
Unless it's afflicted.
it is afflicted. Yeah. Okay. So first, think about this. Wait a second. What have we been, well, I don't know about y'all. Okay. What have you been taught about Isaiah 53 and the rabbis? They don't read it. It is not part of the Parsha readings. It's not in there. Okay. And some people say, oh, well, they've hid it from them. Okay. But this is a rabbinic writing, and the rabbis are quoting Isaiah 53, and this is 500 years after Yeshua. So the rabbis were reading Isaiah 53 500 years after Yeshua, and they are saying that this is a text about the Messiah because they're using this to quote and say that the Messiah's name is Leper Scholar, and they're basing it on this verse in Isaiah 53. So that's the first biggie, okay? The second one is where they're getting the word leper because it's actually the word stricken or afflicted, okay? And that word is nagua, okay? Now, when you do a search, if you got Bible software, okay, you do a search on nagua here, and you see where that word nagua is most used, it is mostly used in the book of Leviticus. When you look at the book of Leviticus, where is that word nagua mostly used in Leviticus? Leviticus 13 and 14. What is our parsha? 13 and 14. What is it talking about? The leper. So this is how they get that this nagua that we're looking at, that our version is translating as stricken or afflicted here, and it is, they're saying that's really talking about the Messiah being a leper, that he is stricken like a leper here, and that he was going to, that this is tying it back to our parsha. And then so, why did they even choose that word? Well, and I got to looking, because different translations translate it different ways, but even the Latin Vulgate translation, it actually says that he would be smitten like a leper there. It translates it to the word leper. 53, and that was verse 4. Okay, let's go down to verse 8. Okay, look at this one. Isaiah 53, verse 8. Well, I'll just keep reading. He was wounded because of our crimes, and he was crushed because of our sins, and the disciplining that makes us whole fell on him, and by his bruises we are healed. We all, like sheep, went astray. We turned each one to his own way, yet Yah laid on him the guilt of all of us. Though mistreated, he was submissive. He did not open his mouth. Like a lamb led to be slaughtered, like a sheep silent before its shearers, he did not open his mouth. After forcible arrest and sentencing, he was taken away, and none of his generation protested his being cut off from the land of the living for the crimes of my people who deserve punishment themselves. Okay, so think about this. We just had verse 4 linking it with the leper. And in verse 8, it says that he was cut off from the land of the living. Who was cut off from the land of the living? The leper. The person, the Metzora. And so even though they were alive, they were the walking dead, but they were cut off. They could not have interaction with those. And even in the Metzora, the book that is, they've got different, the Metzora for different holidays, but the Metzora Yom Kippur, Metzora Le Yom Kippur, quotes Isaiah 53, and I'll put a picture of it. I am here, and it says this. Okay. He brought about a consumption on us. Our righteousness anointed is departed from us. Horror has seized us, and we have none to justify us. He hath borne the yoke of our iniquities and our transgression, and is wounded because of our transgression. He beareth our sins on his shoulders, that he may find pardon for our iniquities. We shall be healed by his wound. At the time that the eternal one, or the eternal, will create him, the Messiah, as a new creature, and bring him up from the circle of the earth, raise him up from Seir to assemble us the second time on Mount Zion by the hand of Yinon. Okay, so this is in the prayer book for Yom Kippur. Okay, it's called Metzora Le Yom Kippur. And it is quoting parts of Isaiah 53. And it says that, and I'm going to read that part again, that we shall be healed by his womb at the time that the eternal will create him, the Messiah, as a new creature, and will raise him up. And so they're saying that this is in reference to the Messiah in their own prayer book. Okay. So most of us have been taught they don't even have it, but it's there in their prayer books. It is there. You've just got to take it to them and show them that it's there. That they're wanting to say, oh, that this passage, Isaiah 53, is now talking about Israel, not the Messiah, but yet they even have their own rabbis saying that, yes, it is about Messiah. Okay. Now, you brought up this point. Even in Yeshua's day, there were many lepers living in the land. Okay. And that also says in Luke 4:27, it says there were many people with Zahara in Israel during the time of even Elijah the prophet, but none of them was healed except Naaman. So think about all the way from Elijah, all those years up to Yeshua's birth, there were lepers, but nobody was healed.
And the leper he healed, he told him.
The leper,
He told him to go to the priest.
well, this is Elijah. No, this is Elijah. And so in Elijah's time, it was Naaman, who wasn't even an Israelite. He was a Syrian. Okay. And that's found in 2 Kings chapter 5. And verse 7, it says, when the king of Israel finished reading the letter, he tore his clothes and he says, am I God? Am I able to kill and make alive? so that he sends a man to me to heal him of Zaharat, you can see that he is only seeking to excuse a quarrel with me. So he's even the king of Israel is recognizing, I can't heal him. It's only Yah that can heal him. So only Yah can heal him. And we see, Moses' hand is, healed. We see Miriam healed. But other than that, there is nobody we see ever being referred to.
Even today, they have that Herodian ulcers, the leper's corn, and all that, there's no.
There's
no what's called it, farm. I mean, they're still working on it. They're still not healed from that.
So I don't.
There's no cure for that type of bloodstream that eats the fingers fall off.
Yeah. Well, it does say Hansen's disease does have a cure today. It does say it can be treated and cured today.
If they did when it first started.
Yeah, it says,
Yeah.
It says once it's last 1 or 2 years, it makes it more difficult. But Hansen's disease today does have some type of cure. So. Okay, I want to look at what it says in reference to Miriam, okay? In Numbers chapter 12, and I want to look at how this is describing Miriam. Numbers chapter 12, verse 9. Okay. The anger of Yah flared up against them, and he left. But when the cloud was removed from above the tent, Miriam had Zaharat, as white as snow. Aaron looked at Miriam, and she was white as snow. And Aaron said to Moshe, "Oh, my Lord, please don't punish us for this sin we committed so foolishly. Please don't let her be like a stillborn baby, with its body half eaten away when it comes out of its mother's womb." And Moshe cried to Yah, "Oh God, please, I beg you, please heal her." And Yah answered Moshe, "If her father had merely spit in her face, she wouldn't hide herself for shame for 7 days. So he let her shut out of the camp for 7 days, and after that she can be brought back in. And Miriam was shut out of the camp for 7 days, and the people did not travel until she was brought back in." Now, I started in verse 9 because I wanted to emphasize here, look at what happened first. After she and Aaron spoke against Moshe, in verse 9, the anger of Yah rises up, and look at what he does. He leaves.
He departed.
Yah departs. His presence can't be in the presence of Zaharat because that's like a death.
Yeah.
It was caused by the sin. And look at verse 12 where it says, Aaron, is said to Moshe, please, don't let this happen. Okay, please don't let her be like a stillborn baby with its body half eaten away when it comes out of the mother's womb. Well, a stillborn baby is dead. It's going to come out looking white, And so a person with Zaharat looks like that. They look like the walking dead or a zombie. And the presence of Yah can't be in the same place with that death. And so, those with Zaharat are basically like the walking dead. And, even, the rabbis, recognize in 2 Kings that, when you look back, and even the king recognized in 2 Kings that only Yah could cure Zaharat. And the rabbis even said that he was the leper. This is a sign of the Messiah. Now, I said it was understood during that day that they thought that if someone could cure leprosy, because remember, nobody is cured. All those years, nobody is cured from leprosy. Okay, let's go to Matthew chapter 8. Now we get to Yeshua. Matthew 8 and verse 1. after Yeshua had come down from the hill, large crowds followed him. Then a man afflicted with Zaharat came, kneeled down in front of him and said, "Sir, if you're willing, make me clean." And Yeshua reached out his hand, touched him, and said, "I'm willing, be cleansed." All at once he was cleansed from his Zaharat. And then Yeshua said to him, "See that you tell no one, but as a testimony to the people, go and let the Cohen examine you and offer the sacrifice that Moshe commands."
There it is.
Mhm.
So you touched me. The leper was unclean.
Yep.
Did that make Yeshua?
Yeah. He was just asking, okay, Yeshua touched him. Does that make Yeshua unclean? Yes.
And to the people around.
Yeah.
There.
Okay, so the leper asked to be cleansed, not healed. He asked to be cleansed. Okay, and Yeshua touched him. I mean, that's amazing itself, because remember what we just said? They were like the walking dead. Nobody, they couldn't have any contact with him. But Yeshua reached out and touched him. So that would have made him unclean. But what does that mean? Does that disqualify him from being the Messiah? No. It just meant that he's going to have to go mikvah and wait till the next day in order to be clean. That's it. You know, because there's those different stages. So think about it. And notice Yeshua tells him to go to the priest, go let the priest examine you in the temple at that time. And, you know, when you go into the women's courtyard, there were actually 4 chambers. And the one that is, that would have been the north. I was trying to do my directions because I'm used to doing this way. East, west. That would be the northwest chamber, which is called the chamber of the lepers. That's where, after the priest, he had already, you know, did the first inspection, whatever, then he actually comes and the priest puts him in that chamber, and then he, you know, he stays in there and waits to be checked again. And if it's still all clear, then he mikvahs. And underneath that is where there's a mikvah in that chamber itself. It's in the women's courtyard. So that's where he would go and bring his sacrifice to. But you think about here that he tells him to go there. And we, you know, I don't know. I've always been under the misconception where, you know, because we read in scripture about the Pharisees. The Pharisees did this, the Pharisees did that. The Pharisees were in control of the temple. But really, when you go back through history, the Pharisees did not control the temple. It was the Sadducees that controlled the temple. The Pharisees controlled the synagogues, not the temple service, okay? So the Sadducees were the ones that were in control of the temple. And so think about the Sadducees and the way, you know, I remember, you know, being in church, the way to tell the difference between the Pharisees and the Sadducees were the Sadducees were sad, you see, because they didn't believe in the resurrection. So that's the way I remembered it. So think about, look at what Yeshua is telling him to do. Go tell them in the temple. These Sadducees did not believe in the resurrection. So when Yeshua tells him to go do as Moshe commands him, he's going to have to go to the temple to present himself. Well, he was dead, and now he's coming to the temple. He's resurrected. He's like being resurrected. So Yeshua is telling them that resurrection is possible. He's showing them that. Because remember, I mean, this is the weird to think about. They had a chamber of the lepers, and no leper would ever healed. It'd never been used until Yeshua's day.
And, you know,
And this is also a prophetic image, right? Of us being asleep,
yes,
not healed.
Yeah. Well, and okay.
And then at the resurrection, the inspection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, and then this you made me think about this. Let's go to this other passage since you were talking about healed. Luke chapter 17. This is another place where we see Yeshua with the lepers. Luke 17 and verse 11. Okay, on his way to Jerusalem, Yeshua passed along the border country between the Shomron and the Galilee. And as he entered one of the villages, 10 men afflicted with Zaharat met him. They stood at a distance and called out, Yeshua, Rabbi, have pity on us. And on seeing them, he said, go let the Kohanim examine you. And as they went, they were cleansed. One of them, as soon as he noticed that he had been healed, returned shouting praises to God, fell on his face at Yeshua's feet to thank him. Now he was from Shomron, and Yeshua said, weren't 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? Was no one found coming back to give glory to God except this foreigner? And the man from Shomron said, and to the man from Shomron, he said, get up, you may go, your trust has saved you. And the thing that sticks out to me here, one, is there were how many lepers? 10. So that makes us think, ding, 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 10 tribes. Okay, so this is a picture of the 10 tribes. They were as lepers. They were considered as dead. Now, they were all healed. So Yah's healing goes across to all of them. But there was only a remnant that comes out of that. There was only one that came and recognized him as the Messiah. That's the picture I'm seeing from that. That Yah's healing can go out to everyone, righteous and unrighteous alike. But there was a remnant that came forth out of that recognized him as the Mashiach. And so it was only one. And that those, to think about. Okay.
It reminds me of the go and sin no more.
Yeah, to go and sin no more. Yeah.
I am still blown away at Isaiah 53. Like, I've heard these verses so many times and I've never connected it to the spiritual leprosy. He was pierced for our transgression, took on, crushed for our crookedness. We all, like lepers, like sheep, went astray. He was oppressed. He was afflicted with leprosy. Like I've never, and he did not open his mouth. Like it's proving which was the cause of the leprosy. And he's proving like there was no sin in him, even with that story in Matthew. The first thing that the leper does after he's healed, he goes on sinning. He opens his mouth.
Yep.
And
wow. Two, and you think about where, even, and even, like in the verse in the Hadashah where it talks about that, being silent, he was led to the slaughter. He did not open his mouth to speak up against that. So, and that too goes to the fact that if that ties in with the law of the jealous wife. He was taking the sin upon himself for that. And if she's guilty and you hold your peace, who pays the punishment? You do. And so that's part of that, where he was taking part of the rebellious, wife's punishment on her because he knew she was guilty. He knew she ran around, but he held his peace because he was taking that instead of her. Okay, now let's look at the purification process right here at the end. Okay. And when you look, and I started looking at the purification process for the woman that just had a child and looked at the purification process for the leper and compared the two. And when you look at them, the steps for the purification for a woman who has had a child are 3 steps. She has a time of impurity, which is either 7 or 14 days, depending on if it's a girl or boy, that she's separated, okay? And then she has a time of purification, which is 33 or 66 days. And then she has to bring her offering. Okay, so there's 3 parts there. So she has a time, she's separated or impurity, the 7 or 14, time of purification, 33 or 66, and then she brings her offering. Well, for the leper, there are 3 steps also. There's the bird ritual. I don't know what else to call it except the bird ritual here. And then the time of purification, which would be 7 days outside of the house, but in the camp, they could come into the camp. And then they had an offering. Okay. And when I started looking, because I was looking at Jewish sources here in the Mishnah, and the Mishnah Tractate, negaim, which talks about impurities, it relates that there's a connection between these two. And it says that in essence, when a leper, a Metzora, is cleansed, it is though he is a newborn baby. He is a new man. When he is cleansed, it is like he is a new man. So it links it back to woman giving birth to a child here. Okay, so look at Leviticus 14, and we're going to look at the process. Leviticus 14 and verse 1. Yah says to Moshe, this is the law concerning the person afflicted with Zaharat. On the day of his purification, he is to be brought to the Cohen, and the Cohen is to go outside the camp and examine him there. So he ain't going into the temple. He goes, he's got to go. He's got to send message, and the Cohen comes outside the camp and examines him and sees if the Zaharat sores have been healed in the afflicted person. Okay. Think about this. Outside the camp should also trigger stuff. Think about in Hebrews, where was Yeshua crucified? Outside the camp. Okay. In 13 and 12, it says, so too, Yeshua suffered death outside the gate in order to make the people kadosh, or set apart. Okay. So just as the Cohen is going outside the camp in order to examine the man in order to make him set apart, Yeshua goes outside the camp in order to make us set apart. Okay. Now, if we keep going in Leviticus 14, verse 4, then the Cohen will order that 2 living clean birds to be taken for the one to be purified, along with cedar wood, scarlet yarn, and hyssop leaves. And the Cohen is to order one of the birds being slaughtered in a clay pot or earthen vessel over running water. As the live bird, he is to take it with cedar wood, scarlet yarn, and hyssop and dip them and the living bird in the blood of the bird slaughtered over running water, and sprinkle the person to be purified from Zaharat 7 times. Next, he is to set the live bird in an open field, and he is to be purified, wash his clothes, shave off all his hair, bathe himself in water, and then he may be clean. And after that, he can enter the camp, but he must live outside of his house for 7 days. That's where he goes into the temple area there. Okay. And he's sequestered. So here's the bird ceremony. Okay. You got 2 birds. One sacrificed, one's left alive. That parallels Yom Kippur. Okay. If we go over to chapter 16 and verse 5, remember the goats at Yom Kippur? Okay, Leviticus 16 and 5, he is to take from the community of the people of Israel 2 male goats, one for a sin offering, 1 ram for a burnt offering. Aaron is to present the bull for the sin offering, which he himself is to make atonement for himself and his household. He is to take 2 goats and place them before Yah at the entrance of the tent of meeting. And then Aaron is to cast lots for these 2 goats, 1 lot for Yah and the other for Azazel. And Aaron is to present the goat whose lot fell to Yah and offer it as a sin offering. And, the one whose goat lot fell for Azazel is to be presented alive to Yah and is to be used for making atonement by sending it away in the desert. Okay. So just like you've got these 2 birds, one's killed, the other one's let go. At Yom Kippur, you got 2 goats, one's killed, one's let go. Okay. Now, Leviticus 14 and 10. Notice it says that on the 8th day, he is to take 2 male lambs without defect, 1 female lamb in its year without defect, and 6.5 quarts of fine flour for a grain offering mixed with olive oil, 2/3 of a pint of olive oil. And the Cohen purifying him is to place the person being purified with these items before Yah at the entrance of the tent of meeting. And the Cohen is to take 1 of the male lambs and offer it as a guilt offering with 2/3 pint olive oil and wave them as a wave offering before Yah. And he is to slaughter the male lamb at the place in the sanctuary for slaughtering sin offerings and burnt offerings, because the guilt offering belongs to the Cohen, just like the sin offering is especially holy. And the Cohen is to take some of the blood of the guilt offering and put it on the tip of his right ear, of the person being purified, and on the thumb of his right hand, on the big toe of his right foot. And the Cohen is to take some of the 2/3 of the pint of olive oil and pour it in the palm of his left hand, and dip his finger in the oil that is in his hand, and sprinkle the oil 7 times before Yah. The Cohen is to put some of the remaining oil in his hand and on the tip of his right ear of the person being purified, and on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, and on the blood of the guilt offering. So think about what just happened here. That when we look at this, he is going to take these offerings, and he's actually going to take the blood from one of them, and he's going to apply it to the ear, the thumb, and the toe. Okay. Now, in Or HaHaim, Rabbi Chaim ben Attar links this sacrifice with the birds of the leper to the 2 messiahs. This is what Rabbi Chaim ben Attar says. We found that the first Mashiach will be from the tribe of Ephraim, who will nevertheless die, revealing himself, and will be followed by the Mashiach descended from David. The Torah speaks of God taking two birds which are pure. These words are similes for the 2 kinds of Messiah. The words to slay one bird in this context are an allusion to the death of the first Mashiach. He will die as an atonement for the sins of the people. So again, we got an Orthodox Jewish source that is linking the sacrifice to Messiah, and that these 2 birds are a picture of the 2 comings. And if these 2 birds are a picture of his 2 comings, they, the Mashiach ben Ephraim or Yosef is the one that is killed. And it says this bird is to be killed over an earthen vessel. An earthen vessel denotes flesh and a body. So think about Mashiach ben Yosef, Yeshua, is coming now. He is in an earthen vessel. He is in this body. And what is also in this earthen vessel where this bird sacrifice is? Water and blood. He's killed. Well, think about it. It's full of water and it's flowing with water. Well, in John chapter 19 and 34, what happened when the soldiers stabbed Yeshua in the side? Blood and water flowed out, just like this bird. Okay. So we have a bird killed, Mashiach killed, an earthen vessel in which water and blood are flowing. And in Leviticus 14 and 4, it says this bird is called a clean bird. Well, the word clean bird in Hebrew is ha'af tahor. Okay. So ha'af hatahor, when you look at the numerical values of the letters, it ends up being 386, which just happens to be what type of bird is used. When you talk about the specific type of bird here, it's used in the Hebrew, it says is Zippor. From where we get Zipporah's name, Zippor, bird. Okay. Zippor numerically is 386. So this clean bird, which is a tahor, which is a Zippor, which is the type of bird, which is 386, is also the value of Yud Shin Vav Ayin, Yeshua, 386. So the bird that was killed is Mashiach ben Yosef. And this is coming from an Orthodox rabbi that's saying that this bird that's killed is the picture of him that's coming. And it's not a dove. No, so a Yonah is a dove. No, it says it's a poor. So, and then when you do look at this is a picture of Yeshua that's taken directly from the Torah and rabbinic sources. And you think about, well, not only that, what else is here? We've got Yeshua was clothed in a crimson robe. He was led to be killed. He was given what? Vinegar on what? Mm-hmm. Or that's what we read, sponge, but it says hyssop. Mm-hmm. Vinegar and hyssop. And if you were Jewish in the first century, you're thinking hyssop, crimson. We got a picture of slaughtering, and we see water and blood coming out. They're standing there making the connection to the leper. Okay. An earthen vessel. And they're, they would be thinking, I'm seeing scarlet. I see a hyssop. I see a tree. The only thing that's missing is the cedar. Is it possible, because he had to carry his crossbeam, that it would have been cedar wood that he was carrying on his back, that he was hung to? I don't know. But that's the one thing that seems like it's missing from the pattern, that, and that this was all linked with the Messiah being killed, and him being an earthen vessel is linked with the bird. And if you connected it, to the cleansing of the person that's leprosy, and the blood, there's going to be blood that was applied when they take these offerings to the right ear, the right thumb, and the right foot. Okay. Well, that's the same procedure that's done for the high priest to be inaugurated. So it's the same process, but that doesn't mean that, that the leper now becomes a priest. It's just the same process to show that he's no longer an inferior person. He's going to have the same dignity now that you give the high priest, because he's no longer a leper. You need to treat him like you would the high priest. Now, what's interesting, if you look at where this blood comes from, okay? Verse 14, Leviticus 14 and 14. The Cohen is to take some of the blood from the guilt offering. Okay. The Asham offering. Now, if you go, look at Leviticus 14, 21. Let's look at these offerings, because remember, if you're poor, you can exchange some of these. If he is poor so that he can't afford to do otherwise, he is to take one male lamb as a guilt offering to be waved to make atonement for him. 2 quarts of fine flour mixed with olive oil, and a grain offering, 2/3 of a pint of olive oil, and 2 doves or 2 young pigeons, such as he can afford, to atone for the sin and the burnt offering. So if the person is poor, some of those things he could exchange or downgrade or whatever, because he couldn't afford the more expensive. So the Hattats, the sin offering, and the Olah can now be 2 turtle doves or 2 pigeons. But if you're poor, you still have to bring a lamb for the guilt offering. So that's the one you couldn't exchange. It didn't matter. You had to have the lamb for the guilt offering. They had to get the money. They had to, okay. So that one could not be changed. Okay. Why is this so important? Let's go back to Isaiah 53. And this is what a lot of people miss. And, when you think about the offerings, is what offering was Yeshua? Isaiah 53 and verse 10. Because remember, there's a sin offering, there's the minha offering, there's the peace offering, there's the guilt offering. Okay, Isaiah 53:10. Yet it pleased Yah to crush him with illness, to see if he would present himself as
A guilt offering.
a guilt offering. And a sham. We can't exchange Yeshua. It didn't matter if you were poor or if you were wealthy. They both had to bring the Asham offering, because it was only the Asham offering, the blood of that it wasn't the guilt offering's blood that was used. It wasn't the Olah blood that was used. It was the Asham offering blood that's used to cleanse them. Okay. It is only that. So it is only his blood that will cleanse us and remove death. So we are like that leper. We're like that Metzora. And with Adam and Eve's sin, it left them into spiritual state of uncleanness, which caused them to be kicked out of the garden. And, they were outside of the camp. Why? Because of their inward attitude that caused them to eat of the forbidden fruit. And every descendant after that of theirs has been clothed with this skin disorder, this corruptible flesh that is eventually going to die if it were not for Yeshua. And to think about, why then was it 7 days that they were to be out the camp? Because it ties back into the total process of them becoming clean is that 8th day. And it's I think a picture of that, leprosy is a picture of death. So after the 7th day, the 7,000 year or the millennium, there, because there's no temple there, that because Yah can dwell with us, it's when death is removed, and he is there with us. It is our new beginning. It is as we are a new creature and a new being reborn. That's just the same picture of the leper being reborn and brought back in. Now they can come into fellowship with everybody, and they can come back into the temple, and they can be that service there. And, as I was going through this study, and that's what I was sort of led to, is that when we think about this, we think about Yeshua, we don't a lot of times link what, we know what we've been taught about Judaism, but we don't really know what they say about stuff themselves. And I wanted to go back into some of those sources and look at what are they actually saying. And now we can see, wait a minute. Yeah, their eyes are blinded to part, just like, church's eyes are blinded to part. But here we are, we've got to know how to approach, just like you got to, we know how to approach people in the church because we came from the church. But a lot of times we don't know how to approach people in Judaism because of the fact that they can throw stuff at us that we don't understand. And but it's, I think, beneficial for us to look at that. Once you have a firm foundation on the word, then to look at, okay, now I can look at some of this and I can weed out, this is why they're saying that. But I'm not throwing away Yeshua. I'm recognizing that some of what they're saying is pointing to him. And now I want to make sure I use some of these verses and say, yeah, I know you say this Isaiah 53 is talking about Israel. It does. But look at what they also say here. Let's look at your own source. Let's go to this source and look at what it says. Because it also says that rabbis also are saying that this is also talking about Messiah. So if this is a picture of him, he is that leper king. He is outside, just like he had to be outside for us. And it's interesting that, the person with leprosy couldn't go into the city. He had to come, the priest had to come out to meet him outside. Yeshua has to meet us outside in order to cleanse us, to bring us into the city. We can't come into the New Jerusalem like we are. We've got to be at the cleansing. After he was, crucified, that he said, don't touch him because he hadn't sinned.
Hold on.
Yeah. So that's what I went with study this week. So I know I went a little different this time. Yeah, but I wanted to look at and to see, there are some spaces that we miss in realizing that, we always think, oh, we can run into his presence or what, and we can't really. We are unclean, and that we need to go through that cleansing process and to realize that all of this stuff, we take it at a literal level, is just talking about a woman having a kid and, being unclean, but it's a picture of us. It's all a picture of us and how Yeshua ties into, he is there to be like that leper king. He is going to come out. He's going to be the one to cleanse us and to sprinkle that on us. And that his whole sacrifice is a picture of those, those two birds that are there. And the blood is going to be used from that Asham offering is a picture to cleanse us. It's going to sprinkle us clean, like he says in Ezekiel.
And the difference in the day, the birth of a male child and a female child.
Yeah.
And, all that.
Yeah. And about being brought into, yeah. So there's so much hidden within it.
Well, why was it so important for the Sham offering?
Yeah.
For, that guilt offering, that is an offering, remember, that is for sin that we did not know
That we're doing.
that we're doing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, praise Yah for that. We all need that because we're still probably don't know some things that, that we're doing maybe is incorrect or whatever that, and thank Yah, we, that Asham offering, that a guilt offering that he was for us, that covers that and covers us.
So we can go, just think about how we could go into the presence of Yah.
Yes.
I don't know. I just think about the person that is the leper, and I think about, even in the, Kingdom of Heaven, the movie there, that you think about how sad they were that they could not be amongst other people.
Yeah.
And even in Ben-Hur, that, and to realize, in Ben-Hur, when his parents, when Yeshua, actually the blood ran down and killed his parents and stuff in the leper colony, and they were able to go to the temple and present their offering in the temple. It was, they were like, this is the best day ever,
Well, the scripture does say too, and I've repeated it many times, who can go up to the mountain of God? Who can go in his holy place? Who can go before him? Those with clean hands and a pure heart. And if you're outside the camp with uncleanness, for you to go inside, you've got to give your life and cleanse yourself and have Yeshua Yah in your heart. So, and that's, this study is just, it's different considering if you just read, Leviticus 12 and on through, you wouldn't think you would get all of this, but it's, there's things that, there's so many gems that are hidden that Yah, the Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh brings forth, that in this time that we're living in, that he's bringing forth to us so that we can see these truths. And we're just really grateful for that, that Yah's doing this for us.
And to think, there's so many people that do come in the way and that end up like, we talked about before in the past, that walk away, that, they, turn to Orthodox Judaism or whatever. And, and it's like,
go too far.
Well, I think part of it is because they become enamored in some of the truths that are there, but they, like the old saying goes, you throw the baby out with the bathwater. And most people don't know where that originates from because the bath water, if you did fill the bathtub up and then everybody took a bath in it, and usually the baby was going to be the last one you put in there because of the fact that, all the adults got, but, and then you would throw the bath water out and they said, make sure you check the baby's not still in there when you throw the bath water out. That's where it came from, if you don't know. But that's the thing is that, they don't realize they would see these truths and they wanted to, go over to that, but then they throw Yeshua out. And this is all pointing back to Yeshua.
Right.
If you've just got to know how to decipher, just like, we have so many commentaries of Christian pastors or whatever, and that they sometimes conflict with each other. You got to know how to pick and choose or, decipher between
you got to know the scriptures or, because most of them know the scriptures that they have. But you have to know it and know the correct interpretation. So,
Yeah, I had me in Mark 4 this morning, and it's talking about the sower, the parable of the sower and the seed, and
Mhm.
fits right in there.
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
But when it's talking about to you, it has been given to know the secret of the reign of Elohim, but to those who
yes,
are outside,
yeah,
tying into the leper and the kingdom after the New Jerusalem's here, there's still some that are outside. All are done in parable, seeing that they see, but they do not perceive, and hearing that they hear, they do not understand, lest they should turn and their sins be forgiven. I just, the Ruach's been moving during this study. It's been powerful. Thank you so much for all of your insight. I'm really wondering because we know that Yah has given them a spirit of stupor.
Mhm.
And he woke me up. I wasn't seeking him. It was truly that Isaiah 65:1, like he woke me up. And it's for his name's sake. And being a firstborn I just see like, I don't know where I heard it. And maybe it was an extra text that like the lake of fire really is just for the fallen angels, and that there is going to be an opportunity for all of mankind eventually to be cleansed, to be healed. And I just wonder, like, if it is like the New Jerusalem, the Garden of Eden is back outside, they will be weeping and gnashing if you're outside of that, grieved that you're not able to enter in. But then
Right.
there's the leaves of healing and a process. And I don't know, that's kind of hopeful. And I hadn't seen it that way, and tying into the days of separation
And, yeah.
and purification, and the bringing the offering for the leper and the woman, and I don't know.
Yep, that is something else to think about to see if what
and I think that,
another tie-in with those days.
yeah, when we're talking about outside the camp, we have to remember, even when you quote the scripture, it does say those, are given a chance, or those that will basically repent and come to Yah. I guess the question is, you have to repent.
Mhm.
Yeshua himself, when he talked to Nicodemus, about being born again, being born of water and spirit. And you have to, that's the thing about it. You have to repent and come to him and recognize him, because, it says in the end time, one day, every knee will bow and every tongue confess that he is Lord. They're going to do that, one way or another. And you're going to have to, there's a judgment seat, the great white throne judgment. And there's going to be, it talks about, in the valley of decision, some are going to go to the right, some are going to go to the left. So in that, whether everybody, I mean, it's a tough thing to think about. Is everybody that didn't come to Yah during this lifetime, are they going to get another chance? You know, that's a tough pill to swallow. But only Yah can tell. I can't. None of us are smart enough to understand all this. I think more than anything else, we have to remember for ourselves, we've got to know Yah and just make sure where our heart and our soul is going, and then pray for our neighbors, our brothers and sisters, because Yah wants all to be saved. He wants all to be saved.
Or could it be possibly that when he returns, that those that are alive at that time that are in the in between, you know what I'm saying? Because even in Judaism, they talk about the three books being opened. You have the book of life and the book of the wicked, but then there's the in between, that may be the ones that it's referring to about that are like outside. That you know what I'm saying? Like during the they talk about during the days of all that, that those are the ones that you're, because that's why you say, may your name be inscribed in the book of life, that, that you would be put over into that other book, because right now you're in that in-between stage and you're not.
Well, even in Revelation,
I
the
don't know.
very last chapter, the very, few verses when it talks about, the ones who add to, subtract, theirs is going to be taken out of the book of life. So it's something, like I said, that what we do, we all have to just know where we are on a personal level with Yah, and
And
just
walk as
love
one.
our neighbor as ourselves, and live as that, that shining light, and that, we just have to be a good witness, and that witness is our lifestyle.
Yeah.
We can talk a good talk all we want, but it's our lifestyle,
How we
our
walk it out.
fruit that we show, our loved ones, our neighbors. That's what's going to shine out. And so at the end of time, I guess we'll all see.
We're all going to be learning.
Listen, I've got a college education, but I don't know all this.
No.
It doesn't, that doesn't give, I know some people, a lot of people have their doctrines in theology and all this, and I'm gonna tell you something, some of
But
them
sometimes he
don't
uses
even know the scriptures, and they have that. So, but this is what we do. This is why we teach. This is why we have this midrash. It's to talk it out. Is to come together and give our opinions and see
into the
about
word.
and
Let's
dig
see.
into what
Yep.
the nuggets. So sometimes they have to be dug out. They can't be. They're not laying on top of the ground. So, and this through the Ruach HaKodesh, through the Spirit of Almighty Yah, we just pray that we'll always see the truth and live it and be able to teach it.
But we do have the hope of the resurrection.
Yes.
That death is removed. We do know that for fact. And so
Amen.
that part we are,
Amen.
regardless, we are standing on that,
So we're going to
We
go
know those
ahead.
loved
Yeah.
ones that are gone before, that
Right.
believers in him, we are believing that
Right.
he's going to resurrect them.
Yeah.
And we're going to see and be with them.
Amen, Eddie. Amen,
Amen.
Eddie. And thank you, Lisa, for a great study.
We're
Yeah,
going to
thank
go
you.
ahead and do the blessing. If everybody wants to, we'll get prepared. We'll just have the blessing over the congregation. Yeverekaka Yahava Verish Mere Yahava Penava Ileka Vehuneka Yesayahava Pinavileka Vayashim Leka Shalom. May Yahweh bless you and keep you. May Yahweh make his face to shine on you and show you his favor. May Yahweh lift up his face toward you and give you peace. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, Sar Shalom. Go in peace.